Thank you very much. I first met Colin about 20 years ago when I was a fresh-faced registered nurse at the PA Emergency Department. I only had a short-lived career nursing and I quickly jumped ship to the ambulance, but my path and Colin's crossed regularly. I remember delivering patients at PA and handing over. I remember seeing Colin at the Royal Children's Hospital where he did shifts, but it wasn't until about several years later when I was working on the helicopter in Brisbane that I really developed a good friendship, and that was when Colin did moonlighting shifts as an emergency physician. Despite what people think, we had a reasonable amount of downtime on the helicopter and we had lots of time to chat, and he was always a joy to work with and the paramedics loved having him on the roster. After I worked on the helicopter, I moved into a position in clinical development in the Medical Director's Office at the QAS, and my main portfolio was managing the clinical practice manual for the paramedics. So we have a manual, it's about 1,000 pages. It silos disease, medical conditions into sort of chapters. We have medical, we have cardiac, we have obstetrics, and we also have a toxicology chapter. And I remember I used to tap into Colin for all my toxicology questions. We had lots of protocols that were written, and I needed someone that could provide not only accurate information, but do it well. Colin always assisted me with providing updated information and adjusting guidelines. He assisted with paramedic education, and he was a huge asset to the QAS team. One thing Colin did though is, I remember him speaking to me about this paper called DORM and a drug called droperidol, and he had suggested it should be something that the QAS consider. The QAS consider, and the reason for that was that they had some great research out of the emergency department settings, and Colin always thought it could be something that could translate up to the pre-hospital environment. It wasn't the right time. We did a couple of things. We introduced the sedation assessment tool score for the paramedics and made that mandatory to patients who were being assessed with agitation. And we changed some guidelines, but it really wasn't the right time for Colin. He was busy, I was busy, and maybe not the right time for the service. In 2015, we had several of our paramedics across the state get viciously assaulted by predominantly patients. This isn't limited to just QAS or ambulance workers, obviously ED staff with hospital, doctors, nurses, and also allied health. But we had several paramedics viciously assaulted. We were in the media a lot. There was a lot of news, a lot of parliamentary questions, and the Commissioner at the time made a decision that he wanted to get together a task force of experts in their area to make a list of recommendations to what we could do to improve the risk of occupational violence to our paramedics. That task force created a report in 2016 in April that provided a list of recommendations from how we improve education to how we improve our clinical guidelines. And straight away one of the recommendations got flicked to my area, looking after clinical development, and that was that the QAS would introduce droperidol in October 2016. The report came out in April. The ministerial promise was October, so I thought I had to get cracking. I remember I rang Colin and said, Colin, if you've ever wanted to do a study, this is your time. He'd voiced an interest in doing a study, but I said that we need to crack on because in 6 months' time we need to have droperidol at least available to our paramedics and training well underway. Colin got together a team of like-minded individuals, many of which are in the room, and we had a small group of people interested in doing the study. He frantically wrote research proposals, did ethics applications. I sat in the background and did internal QAS work. So I wrote ABD protocols for the ambulance and droperidol drug therapy protocols. We did a whole series of videos for paramedics for training. Colin presented the results of DORM and the suggestion that we should move to droperidol to the QAS Medical Advisory Committee. And he reassured them about the black box warning and things would be okay. And we walked out of that meeting with a tick from the MAC, and a couple of weeks later we had a tick from the Commissioner to go ahead with the study. So Colin's study was basically a before and after study looking at comparing midazolam, which is our current treatment for ABD, to droperidol. So the QAS is split into two tiers. We have critical care paramedics and we have advanced care paramedics. There's about 350 critical care paramedics and about 3,500, 4,000 advanced care paramedics. At this stage, only our critical care paramedics could use midazolam for the treatment of ABD. And we did that with reasonable success. We had several significant adverse events. We had been to the coroner's court and we were very nervous. And speaking to most of the CCPs around, everyone had been bitten by midazolam at one point. So we tend to have a very safe, slow, 2.5 milligram aliquot process. And that would just cause havoc. We would spend a significant amount of time on scene, and often we never really got full control of the patient. So Colin wanted to do a before and after study looking at the two drugs and basically seeing what the right choice was. The inclusion criteria is very simple. It was patients with ABD. They had to have a sedation assessment tool score of 2 or greater. We couldn't verbally de-escalate them. They were adults from 16 up, and they had to be transported to a Metro Health hospital, and we obviously excluded people with allergies or Parkinson's disease. The protocol was reasonably simple. A paramedic in South East Queensland would attend a case. They would attempt to do verbal de-escalation. If that wasn't successful, they would check the inclusion-exclusion criteria and then basically just admit whatever drug was approved at that time. So for the first 6 months it was midazolam, and after training it was droperidol. And quite conveniently it worked out to be 6 months in each arm. The midazolam protocol was a little bit confusing. CCPs generally just did small aliquots. But the one thing Colin always said to us was you need to keep droperidol simple. And he just said 10 milligrams repeated once at 15 minutes to a maximum dose of 20 milligrams. The simplicity of that protocol was a huge advantage for QAS paramedics. We try to keep things simple, and despite a lot of fear from critical care paramedics and paramedics in the state, the droperidol did work very well. So if we look at the numbers, now I completely underestimated. I know people always talk about that they don't recruit enough patients. This went crazy. We did it in South East Queensland. So during the period of 12 months, we had 347 people with an ABD presentation from any calls. Some people didn't submit the paperwork, and obviously some people were excluded. But in both arms, we had 141 patients in midazolam, and we had 149 in the droperidol arm. Colin was absolutely ecstatic about these numbers. He was really excited. He said, this is going to be a fantastic paper. This is something we can all be proud of. And he said this would be a practice-changing paper for the QAS. And irrespective of what it shows, this is very noteworthy and a fantastic study. The results of the study were very impressive, and it was not different to the previous study. So with midazolam, we had adverse event rate of 23.4% of all our patients. So adverse event rate was obviously anything with airway, SpO2 or heart rate. But with droperidol, the adverse event rate was only 7.4%. So it was a huge improvement. I remember one of the senior executives said to me, why do you let paramedics use midazolam for so long with such a high adverse event rate? And I said, well, we didn't know. We had to do the study. Another thing that was really interesting and that we found that we didn't expect was time to sedation was faster with droperidol. And the reason for that was because of the simplicity of the protocol that Colin designed. Critical care paramedics had all been burnt with midazolam, and we would often just sit there and do very small aliquots at 2.5, and it would just cause the scene time to be protracted. So the protocol is very simple, and it worked well. And successful sedation speaks for itself. So with midazolam, we only had 35%. But with droperidol, we had 83% of people getting successfully sedated. So how we define successful sedation was a patient who had a drop in their sedation assessment tool score of 2 or more points, or to 0, was adequately sedated by the drug, didn't require further sedation by either QAS or the hospital after arrival, and didn't have any adverse events. So the results were absolutely outstanding. Colin was ecstatic. This was a great publication. It created lots of media attention. Unfortunately, Colin was quite ill at this time, and I did a lot of the media. As you can tell, public speaking is not my strong point. But we did lots of media, and I think we did over 32 interviews. This was both local interviews. The Minister's Office got involved and wanted us to do further interviews, but we also spoke to people overseas as well. And I fielded several inquiries from ambulance services in Australia, but also overseas, about droperidol and how the drug was introduced into QAS. Colin was excited, but he had further work to do. And he said, look, this is a great paper, but we haven't accurately represented the elderly population due to very small numbers, but also we haven't looked at paediatrics. So why don't we do another 12 months of data collection, and then we can do 2 further studies. I foolishly agreed. Colin did an amendment to ethics, and next minute we were off again. And the second paper was published, which was the paediatric paper. And this was published just before Colin passed away. And this was also another outstanding paper, and we found that our adverse event rate was 8%, which was outstanding. So very exciting times. The third paper that Colin wanted to do, which specifically looked at the elderly, I'm going to be presenting tomorrow in one of the free paper sessions. So if you're interested, come along. So we were very ecstatic with these results, very proud, and this was all due to Colin's hard work and dedication. Colin has had a huge impact on not only the QAS but paramedics in general. He was always friendly to the staff, they all knew him. And I think that one of the biggest things is we now have rock solid protocols for ABD management in QAS. We have droperidol now on every vehicle in the state. And we have a significant improved safety profile for the management of patients with ABD. And that's a huge thing that we have achieved. Colin has influenced protocol changes in not only Australia but also overseas. And we are very proud of where we stand, and we are considered at the forefront of ABG treatment in the pre-hospital environment. Some of our colleagues around the state are following with droperidol. Others are sitting back a bit and wanting to see what happens, but we are very proud of our protocols, and we feel very content that they're rock solid and we've done well. On a personal note, Colin was absolutely fantastic to deal with. During the recruitment phase of the study, I must have spoke to Colin every couple of days, or at least emailed. I would do a lot of the emails after hours just for convenience, and surprisingly Colin would often email back within minutes with questions. So we had a very good relationship. He was a mentor. He inspired me to take on some further research, which I never thought I was interested in, and potentially even go back to uni and do some further education. So personally, the paramedics thank him, the senior executives from the ambulance thank him, and I thank him. Cheers.